Hello, welcome to Connie Martinson Talks Books. One sees this woman's face, outside of art museums. There she is with the big black eyes and the two eyebrows that scraggly meet in the center of her nose. She is the mystery woman. She is also an artist, and she was the woman to Diego Rivera. But she was much more than that, and that is what my guest, Kate Braverman, has done with her new novel, The Incantation of Frida K. It's published by Seven Story Press. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. And the poet Kate Braverman has also become and used that poetic sound, that rhythm, that motion into the novelization of Frida Kahlo.
Yes, I am really a poet who camouflages that, since it's so very unacceptable in this culture, because I can write dialogue and I have a sense of drama. So I've learned to stretch my poems out into a very lyrical, rhythmic, I think interesting, incantatory sort of prose.
What do you mean by incantation?
Well, for the title of the Frida book, why it should be an incantation, because it has a sense of magic to it, an incantation, and traditionally that would be a verbal form, and the book is meant, really, you can read sections of it out loud.
Speaking of which, will you read the first 3 paragraphs?
I would love to.
All right, because
the book is set in the last week of Frida Kahlo's life, when she knows that she is dying.
Could we just, before you read, I want them to know a little more about Frida, that she was missing a leg, she was a great artist, and there was great competition between Frida and Diego.
Well, actually, there's a bit more to it than that. Frida Kahlo was the first woman psychoanalyzed in Mexico. She was a communist. She was bisexual. She was a morphine addict. She was a great painter, unrecognized in her time. And as a minor point, she was married to Diego Rivera, who was the most famous painter of his time. And as Diego often says, why don't you paint Frida? You know, diminutive and grotesque and insignificant as they are, it gives you something to do. And she will say, I paint postcards from a planet that doesn't yet exist. You paint walls.
Yeah.
Referring to his murals, famous murals that we know of, commissioned by Rockefeller in New York, and the Pacific Stock Exchange in San Francisco.
And there was a restaurant in Coronado that he had painted the walls of, and they were known for it. Yeah. But they were strictly, almost in some ways, not WPA type painting, but they were more, they weren't the small painting.
And they were huge paintings, and Frida says they're conventional, and that he paints the backs of women because it's easier. He doesn't want to think about their faces. When you see the peasant women gathering the calla lilies. Mm-hmm. And I was very happy to talk to a curator at a museum in New York who told me that, except for the historical interest, that Diego Rivera's paintings are now considered obsolete. Mm-hmm. And it is Frida Kahlo's paintings that are considered revolutionary.
Which is called If You Live Long Enough. But will you read now?
The beginning, when Frida knows she is dying. I was born in rain, and I will die in rain. They will say I was a slut with a brazen sailor's mouth. They will not remember my elegance and restraint. I learned in a hospital, in one solitary confinement or another, that it is still an error of barbarism. In surgery and convalescent rooms, laminated by electric light, I recognized their limitations. In this way, I transcended them. I defied gravity. I should have died in the gutter like a barren dog, a hit by trolley car bitch. I should have died in Diego's overwhelming shadow, curled into its shallows and currents, its blood-stained coral reefs. When you have dragged your polio leg like an anomalous branch scratching the pavement behind you, when you have continued breathing after they left you for dead on a city boulevard, when you have lived with Diego, when you have looked into your face and seen your third eye, you know death is a reward. And what we should say about Frida Kahlo now is that when she was 17, she was in a ghastly trolley car accident, and a 12-foot metal spike from the trolley car impaled her through the vagina and came out her spine, crushing it completely. Her leg was broken in 16 separate places. Her shoulders were dislocated, and from the crushing of her spine, she never recovered. She spent most of the rest of her life in a plaster cast. It was during the 20s. They had no idea what to do with her injuries, so they would just periodically put her in a new cast.
Yeah. You capture in this book what she is going through, even to the way the body will be disintegrating. But it's when she's in the hospital and she knows that Diego is going out with other women, and she calls it the year of his blondes.
Yes, Diego had different years with different women, and sometimes it was the year of his tweed and gabardine fur-trimmed women, and years of his Hollywood blondes. Infidelity was Diego's hobby. And also, they had an open marriage.
Because she has an affair with Leon Trotsky. Now, is that true, or is that the author literary license?
I believe I made that up. But she had so many affairs. Edward Weston, the photographer, numerous other famous people. Whether she actually had an affair with Trotsky or not, I truly cannot remember. What happened with Frida is that her biography is so dramatic and overwhelming that I felt that my challenge was not to deal with the Frida that the whole world knows, but to do a molecular biography, to get into the nuances of what might be her fantasy world. I know as a confessional writer how much of my own work is subterranean and coded. Because the only way an artist can dare to get so naked with the world is to believe that the work itself is inviolate. Now, of course, that doesn't happen with women the way it does with men.
Tell me about the difficulty of writing and going into that place of yourself where you can be both objective and subjective almost at the same time as a writer.
It was interesting, and I believe that artists leave behind their bones, this great enamel architecture. But what is under this? That is what is fascinating to me. And Frida became a consuming force in my life. She became a fever. And the more I inhabited her, the more our personas merged, as some reviews have suggested, one icon writing about another. I felt very close to her, and that the further I got from the ordinary biographical details, the more I felt I was with the real Frida.
Kate, what was the moment when you thought, I must write about this woman? What was the sort of the catalyst for saying, I know where she lives?
Well, on the surface, she seemed a prototype of every feminist issue of the 20th century.
So you had
and her paintings
But did you have to read her biography before you got to that point, or was it something chemical almost in seeing her paintings?
It was a chemical reaction in seeing her paintings. And then I was very disappointed with reading a diary. I only read 3 pages, and I found her voice to be coarse and vulgar and primitive. And one of the challenges in the Incantation of Frida Kahlo is to invent a voice, a literary style that would have the elegance and the sense of danger and risk and insurrection and magnificence that the paintings have, that Frida, as a normal speaker, did not have. Did you encounter that when you read her diary?
Yeah.
That it would be so shocking that she would be as uninteresting in her written work as her paintings are.
We should also tell our friends in the audience that you have been, as an instructor, a teacher of English. There are people who absolutely light candles to you, Kate, at this moment, including the white, is the white orchid, the...
White oleander, Janet Fitch, one of my very talented students.
And I mean, she said it was by taking your course that she could open up her own sort of safe in her own body.
I've heard from many of my students that I gave them a feeling that they were safe.
Yeah.
That they could risk taking that journey inside, which is an agony.
Yeah. That includes a book that's now out in paperback by Kate Braverman called Lithium for Medea, which is about mother-daughter, and I guess even granddaughter, mother-daughter, generation to generation, and again, based a great deal on your own life.
Well, as Frida Kahlo's paintings were based on her life, there is always that inner secret element within the work, especially confessional work, because you have a sort of persona, as Sylvia Plath did. And because the persona, the mythic known artist, is not really you.
Kate, pursue just a little bit about your life has not always been, movie glorious. You've had rough points. You have not always had, I guess, almost food on the table, from what I gather. But you're a survivor.
Well, Lithium for Medea is the first book in English that I know of in which the protagonist is an IV drug user. The first heroine on heroin written in our culture. I've experienced the 60s activism. I experienced drug addiction. I grew up in abject poverty. I was a feminist during a period when all the feminists were either living alone or living with other women. I was a single mother. I had a very unfortunate family with my father a cancer invalid and my mother was mentally ill. I have had all of the profound dysfunctions that we know. Also, I was in psychiatry for over 20 years. I was in AA for 9 years. And currently, I do yoga. I do yoga about 4 hours a day.
Okay. But I'm not wrong then in saying the survivor. But with that surviving came the ability to be an artist. And also, the fact that you could write at the end about, on page 233, people discuss her abrasive voice. If you would just read a little of that.
People discuss her abrasive voice, how corrosive it is, loud and coarse, like she'd been eating gravel. Its harshness surprises, seems superimposed not her at all. Perhaps it's a genetic defect. Perhaps she has stitches in her throat. But why does she not brush her hair? Why does she dye it red, blonde, charcoal? And the way she applies cosmetics, it's as if she smeared fire engine red lipstick on her mouth without using a mirror. It's unfortunate because she has beautiful white teeth. She is still, in her oddness, attractive. She rides a bicycle with her husband. They wind down to the harbor where they have a sailboat. On summer Sundays, she packs a lunch for them, carries it in her bicycle basket. They sail past midnight. Their boat has no name, no home port. Sometimes they swim. They set up croquet on their acres of front lawn above the harbor. They play tennis at the country club where they do not speak to anyone. They have been observed reading on a porch swing. For them, it is always Sunday. It is said that she has extreme moods. Sometimes she dominates conversations with opinion and anecdote. Don't get her started on politics or art. She'll give you a lecture in the parking lot of the general store and talk your ear off. Be careful, too. She has unexpected areas of expertise. You'd be surprised.
Now, is that my author writing about herself in some ways?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And having the journey of inhabiting Frida,
Yeah.
because when you write a molecular, fictionalized biography, it becomes yours.
Yeah.
And the merging that you have with your character is so absolute that towards the end of the book, we inhabit Kate as much as we inhabit Frida.
Yeah. The husband seems very nice.
The husband of the last
Yeah.
pages.
Yeah.
He's wonderful. I married a very fortunate marriage to Dr. Goldstein, who is a molecular biologist and a genetic engineer. And I was asked at a dinner party the other night how it is that we get along, what it is that we have in common. And science is actually quite daring. It's not about sitting there memorizing math formulas. You do all that.
Yeah.
And then you begin to create with it. And it isn't so different from making fictions.
Just tell them a little bit about the book that I loved about the two kids who are living in the, I guess it's...
It's actually UCLA student housing. It was. It became UCLA
Yeah.
student housing. And then I believe they ripped it down completely.
Mm-hmm. But it was where the kids whose parents are dying of cancer, the families can live there for very little money, but they're made to feel definitely below the salt.
I remember feeling that way when I lived in those circumstances on Sepulveda Boulevard in Culver City.
Just in the shadow, really, of one of the richest country clubs and worlds in Los Angeles. People don't realize that there is another level of life for people here.
Well, that's been an interesting element in my work because most people who have had the life that I have had do not survive. They do not become educated. They do not have the self-esteem and the vocabulary to pursue their art and become disciplined and believe that their vision of the world is worth writing and learning how to write and having the daring to do that. They are too crippled, and also emotionally and economically, of the various oppressions that I have had in my life as being marginalized, as a single mother, as a drug addict.
What age were you?
Poverty was the worst oppression that I had. And I remember the smell of meat, how extraordinary it was when we would receive our stipend, and everyone would be eating meat for that 1 or 2 nights when their food stipend first came in. And the feeling of hunger at the end of the month when you send your children to neighbors to see if they can get a jelly sandwich because no one is eating. And having had that economic oppression, and most people in those circumstances have to continue with blue-collar work, and the idea that it is romantic somehow is such a lie. It is a great lie that you can work as a checker at a supermarket and then come home and work on the great American novel. It is no accident that it is almost entirely the aristocracy that write novels.
Hear, hear. I mean, you really have quite a program there to sort of dispel around the country. How do you write? I mean, do you work every day?
I used to work every day, and I did that for perhaps 25 years.
Yeah.
And now when I am on a project in the fever of it, I will work 12 and 14-hour days. But I have modified my schedule, and I couldn't have done this before. But since I became married, since my marriage, and raising a daughter, doing a bit of soccer mom activities, I was writing on a regular schedule. And now I have other concerns that feed my work. I live in the Allegheny Mountains. I have a garden. I grow my own food. I have walking trails that I take through the maple forest. I am involved with my community. I belong to the Wee Playhouse, where we read a play once a month. I'm involved with the art school. I have found, after so many years of only looking at people as being objects that I could write about. For instance, will this person give me some dialogue? For instance, has this person an anecdote that I can use? To actually being interested in people for who they are, not what I can create of them.
Isn't that a sign of growing up?
I don't know. I think
maturing.
that for instance, the Incantation of Frida Kahlo, a book club who was reading it in Berkeley yesterday told me they decided that the book is really about each woman finding their own Frida. Yeah. I think growing up, what defines it is absolutely unique. For some people, it would be not being involved in the community bake sale and being able to say they're not interested.
Did it take the death of your mother to make you have the freedom of your art?
No, because I have been practicing my art through my mother's mental illness. So it was not her death, but her death has freed me to be a more human person. Mm-hmm. And perhaps towards the end of the Frida Kahlo book, which was written very recently, there is a new sense of humanity that is in the book that wasn't there during my more consumed and mythic characters. Yeah. I found that just being an ordinary person is incredibly interesting. Yeah. And I told my daughter that perhaps instead of pursuing my 20-year-old daughter who goes to Berkeley and just took her law boards, that instead of pursuing greatness, Diego Rivera says in his book, in my book, no one wants to attend the opera anymore. Everyone wants to be an opera. And there are more people who want to write books than there are who want to read books. And that perhaps by being a serious reader all of one's life, by playing a musical instrument, not because one wishes to be at the symphony in Boston, but because one enjoys it, perhaps by growing one's own food, and I've also learned ceramics. I can make vases, And the idea of cutting my own flowers from the garden and putting them into a vase I've made and serving a pasta with the tomatoes I've grown is a sort of thrill also.
You know what I'm loving, Kate, is that in your speak, there is poetry. There is the repetition that pulls the listener in and is really speaking in, not quite blank verse because it has a rhythm.
Rhythm was very important
Yeah.
to writers my age. Writers a little older would have been influenced by film, by what you can do with cross-cutting and moving through time.
Mm-hmm.
And writers my age who went through the 60s are very influenced by sound and rhythm, coming with music being the great innovation of our period.
Kate, I hate to say it, but we are at the end, and I'm going to ask you, will you autograph my book?
Again, another
of my Kate Braverman treasures. If you would like a copy of our newsletter, Good Books, send me a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Good Books, P.O. Box 69, 1640, Los Angeles, California, 90069. Look for us on the web at www.conniemartinson.com. Look for our column in the Beverly Hills Courier, and also write to us at talksbooks@lycos.com. We'll tell you about some other books we've liked recently. Support your local library. Go in, take out a card, and truly, if you have very little money, you can go to the library. You can spend time there. They have poets reading, authors reading, and it's a way of even connecting in book clubs. And the books are there to be taken out with a library card. But remember, bring it back when you're supposed to, because somebody else may be waiting to read that book. And we'll thank you and see you next time. Thank you, Kate.
Connie, such a pleasure.
Thank you, dear.